Hello and welcome to Wolfman Gaming. This is my Uncharted 4 Crushing Difficulty walkthrough, and this is chapter 20, also known as No Escape, and this is part 2 of that chapter. And as you probably can hear, I am still croaking like a fucking frog because this cold will not end. And it's really annoying, but I'm gonna do my best. But the same rules apply to this video as the last one, that sometimes there may be a few prolonged silences, and that's me editing out coughing. And during the rest of this chapter we are gonna be in some quite intense fights, and the best way to approach this is to choose the best weapons for the next fight. So going out from this one, I like to pick up the Condor, because the Condor is a fucking beast of a weapon. This may very well be the absolute best shotgun in the entire Uncharted series. And what makes it a little bit unique in this game is the fact that blind firing isn't that good in Uncharted 4. No game in this series has as good blind firing as the second game. But the Condor has such a high damage output, and it is a shotgun, which means that there is some spread to it. So this can really dominate when you're blind firing. And this video is actually a little bit unique in this series, because I will encourage you to try to do a headshot. And I try to make all my strategies as little depending on skill as possible. That was a completely incorrect sentence, but hopefully you understand what I mean. But in the next fight, I'm gonna pick up the Copperhead going out of this area, because with the Copperhead you can zoom in. And in the next fight there is a guy with a rocket launcher, and he should be your top priority. He needs to go down first. And I think he is also heavy, so what I want you to do is aim for his head. And that's why the Copperhead is so great, because you can zoom in with it, because he is quite a far away from you. Here we have it, the Copperhead SR7, which is also a beast of a weapon. You only get 25 bullets, which is a little bit cheap, but we also have a Baroque and 4 grenades. So I know, because I have watched this video, and I know that it will not get me the entire way there, because I get a little bit sloppy. But you saw the guy with the rocket launcher, he fired at us so the floor went down. So we're gonna need to take him out immediately. We have him up there, so I just zoom in and try to go for the headshot. As soon as you have taken him out, the biggest threat is removed. But don't get too comfortable, because this is quite a hard fight. There are quite a few enemies. And as I said, I get a little bit sloppy and a bit too generous with my grenades. So I ended up in a situation where there is me against one heavy left, and I am completely out of bullets. I ran out of bullets, I ran out of grenades, and that, my friends, is a really shitty position to be in. So I urge you, try to use your grenades as wisely as possible. Whenever you throw a grenade, try to take out at least 2 enemies. But there is a checkpoint at the beginning of this fight. You may have seen a little transition, so feel free to be aggressive. If you don't think that this strategy works for you, I like to stay here, because when they throw grenades, you can move over to the other side of this shipwreck, which will take you out of the blast radius of the grenade. So that's why I think it's so great, because no enemies will come in here either. And as long as you have taken out the rocket launcher dude, you will not have too much problems, hopefully. You can run out of bullets, and then you may be in a heap of trouble, because I said there are quite a few enemies over there. You see, I've used up all 4 grenades, and I think I've killed people with all of them. And there are still, I think it's 2 guys left. Maybe, no, there's 3 guys left, at least. So I was starting to get a little bit nervous, because it took me a few tries to get through this fight. Because when, or if you start moving up and you move into that shipwreck where they are, you will trigger another spawn of enemies, which I will do when I run out of bullets, because I have to move up to try to restock on ammo to take out the last heavy. And then you'll trigger a spawn on a ship over to the left side, on the very far left of this arena. And there you also have guys with rocket launchers. And things can get a little bit hectic. But we are on the home stretch of firefighting in this game, actually, because after this fight and the ship on the other side, I think there's only one fight left. One last armed fight, unless you're counting the last boss fight, but you take on that fight using your fists and an old what's called a sword. It's not a sword, it's a rapier, saber, something like that. Either way, now I've run out of bullets, and that is a big mistake on my part, because that is a heavy and he has an ARX 160, and we all know how much damage one of those can do. So I go up here, because he has a tendency to stay down on ground level. And here is my big mistake, because when you move over here you see things start exploding around me, and that's because the enemies on the other side have spawned in. So if you can, try not to move up this far, because I have stacked quite a few bodies over there, and that was pure desperation on my part. I got a little bit lucky with him, I will admit to that. So try to use your bullets as wisely as you can. But the good part, now that we have taken out the first wave, is that if you go up on the second level of this old shipwreck, there will be a rocket launcher waiting for you, and we're gonna use that to take out the enemies on the other side. And that is also one of those weapons that if you use it wisely, you can make a lot of damage. And we love making a lot of damage, don't we? That's why you play these action-adventure games, because it's fun to destroy things. And the enemies on the other side, they have a tendency to move into little groups, which is a really good thing. Be careful though, because whenever they shoot, if you're hiding behind these little walls, they will not harm you, but their blast can push you out of cover, like you see right there. And that can kill you on crushing. Because if you get really unlucky and you get pushed out of cover and someone fires at that very instant, because you can take some damage if the blast gets too close to you, that will put a quick end to this fight. And I don't think we have reached a checkpoint yet. If you die before you move over to that ship, I think you will go back to the beginning of this fight, when we're starting out in that little shipwreck part. So now, before we go over, now that we have taken out those enemies, I'm gonna run around and try to find some useful handgun ammo. Because I have the ARX, I will switch it for an RPG when I get over to the other ship, but I don't want to rely on just an RPG. And luckily for me, there is a Baroque lying here, so we get at least 3 bullets, and then we can move up to the second fight. And this fight can be quite hard, because there is an ultra heavy spawning in. But there are grenades to pick up, you see down there on the weapons case. The next fight will not trigger until you jump down. And once again you will see a little transition. So I move over here and pick up 2 grenades. And when you respawn in, you get 3 rockets for your rocket launcher. And what I recommend you do is try to use the grenades to take out all the ordinary enemies. Use the grenades and the Baroque, because we will use our trusty RPG for this guy, which is moving in, and he has one of those giant bazooka guns. Or it's not a bazooka, but some kind of minigun thing. And that shows you just how big of a damage output the RPG has. Because it takes, I think it's 4 hand grenades to kill one of those ultra heavies. And it only takes 2 shots from the rocket launcher. And that shows that it probably has about double the damage output from a hand grenade. Which is, in my book, really beastly. And now we're gonna turn down the tempo a little bit. This is quite easy. All you need to do is swim through this ship. And now we're gonna prepare for the last gunfight of the game, actually. Because when we get out of this ship, we will move on to a beach. And that is the last combat you will be engaged in this game. Unless for, as I said, the last boss fight. And this fight is really fun, I think. I have picked up some more bullets for my Baroque. There is a ton of grenades lying around here. And this, as I said, this is the last piece of combat you will see in this game. So you don't need to save your bullets or your grenades. Be extremely aggressive, because this is the last chance you'll get, and there are plenty of resources. Some of these covers are destructible. That is something you need to remember. These shoreline boxes aren't, so they are a great place to take cover behind. But never stay behind these walls for too long, because they will break, basically. But on all these weapons cases lying around on this beach, there are at least 2 hand grenades. So just let it rip. This is your reward for getting through chapter 20, because this is by far the hardest chapter in the entire game. In this video I hopefully have made it look quite easy, but some of these fights actually took me a few tries to get through. Especially the first fight in the ship graveyard. But overall in this game, I would say that the elevator fight in chapter 17 trumps everything when it comes to difficulty, just because that fight is complete bullshit. We all know it. And it could have been done so much better. This is a bit of an awkward position, but luckily for me, I had a Baroque. And now we have this giant truck that is firing at us. And something that's quite interesting, he's firing quite aggressively when I'm hiding behind cover. And he stops firing when you start moving towards him. Which, I think it should be the other way around. That would be the smart thing from his perspective. But he's mainly there to stress you. So you want to go up and pick up this RPG. And 2 blasts will make him crash down on the beach. And now we're gonna be joined by his friend. Which reminds me a little bit about... Remember in Uncharted 2 when you're running through the streets? I think it's chapter 5, 6, something like that. And there is a big truck chasing you. This is completely unnecessary. I'm running around trying to pick up ammo because I had forgotten about the fact that this was the last fight. So there is no need to pick up anything, because now we will just run and get chased by this big asshole. And this is one of those moments, once again, there have been quite a few throughout this series where they put in something like this just to stress you. Because there is nothing you can do against this guy until the game tells you to do so, because we will get another RPG which will end this guy. But all we can do for now is run. And I think this is a pretty fun sequence. As I said, it reminds me a little bit of Uncharted 2, where you get to the city. I think it's chapter 5 or 6, when you're being chased through the streets by that big armored vehicle. And also in The Lost Legacy there was a sequence similar to this. Even though I think in The Lost Legacy, remember that part if you have played it or watched my walkthrough, where there are a bunch of platforms you're supposed to get in between, and there is an APC showing up. There's like an APC ex machina that pops out of walls everywhere. Here go little Crash Bandicooty running towards the screen, jumping fences. That was one of the... But that APC fight, and I'm not talking about the boss fight when you're supposed to hide behind towers and shit like that to get past it or to kill it. But that part where you're jumping between platforms trying to take it out, that was the worst part of that game by far. But now we have gotten an RPG from Sully, and that ends the big APC. And that is actually the last time we will fire a weapon in this game. So now we can enjoy the stillness for a few minutes. Because they have decided, we have taken out all of Shoreline. All of Rafe's and Nadine's men are now probably dead or have decided that they don't get paid enough to continue this. And Nate and Sully and Elena and Sam is his name, have also decided that they are fed up with this. It's time to head home and piss off from this area. And sometimes you just have to count your losses. But of course, things will not go exactly according to those plans, which things never do in these games. I think I talked about that in my Uncharted 3 walkthrough. How interesting would that be if you halfway through the game could just say fuck it and leave? Like an alternate ending where your character just decides that, yeah, it's not worth it. I'll take life over fortune any day. I'm gonna head home and start growing tulips or something like that. Something more peaceful that does not contain me killing hundreds and hundreds of soldiers. It would be quite funny if they put in one of those Easter egg endings, like they've done in the Far Cry series. That is also, I think that's an example I used last time as well, that in both Far Cry 4 and 5, you could end the game in like a few minutes. In Far Cry 4, it was if when you were at Pagan Min's dinner table, if you decided to just stay there, like Pagan Min tells you, you will unlock an Easter egg ending. And in Far Cry 5, there is, if you choose not to arrest, what's his name, Joseph? I think it's called Joseph. It's quite fun. I played that game like a week ago and I've already forgotten his name. But if you decide not to arrest him, you will just piss off, basically, and head on home. And I don't know what happens actually, because I haven't unlocked that ending myself. I played through the game instead because it was a really fun game, and I urge everyone to try it. It's the most fun Far Cry game I've played in years. And this is one of those annoying moments. Because what you have to do here is wait. This is completely time sensitive. As far as I know, there is no way to speed this up. Because what we have to wait for is to Sam to take the initiative to start moving that log out over the edge. And I was actually thinking about editing this a little bit, trimming out the waiting period, because I think it's so unnecessary. There should be a way to trigger this. And it's not a long wait, it's only like maybe 30 seconds, something like that. But it still feels unnecessary. I've never been a fan of those moments where the game forces you to wait for something like that. It's just stupid. And now we're gonna wait for them to move their little butts over to that swing-like. Almost looks like something out of the worst amusement park ever. Like the abyssal swing, where you bet your life and one guy that's probably overworked and underpaid pulls some moldy old rope to get you across a chasm. And after everyone has gotten past, we can start moving up this rope and onto the swing ourselves. And I think I've done a little edit here. Or haven't I? Apparently not. Either way, this is one of those scripted moments trying to make the game a little bit more tense. And Sam ends up on the other side of the chasm, and he decides that he hasn't had enough. Of course, because Sam is a complete idiot. And as I said, it would be a little bit of a lame ending if they just gave up and headed home. So Sam is gonna force us to go after Rafe for the final showdown, because he wants that treasure so bad he can taste it. And I must admit, if I had gone through all the trouble that they have in this game to get this treasure, I would be inclined to do that as well. Because who would go through all this shit just to say, I give up and go home? No one. But that concludes chapter 20, and I want to thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video. So until next time, this is the Wolfman signing off.